Splattered with goo, one figure threw their arms up in furious exasperation, declaring this would be the absolute last time, their wide eyes accusing. The other, emerging nonchalantly from a portal with bags in hand, merely dismissed the outrage, remaining detached from the pain of the accusation that they only cared for themselves. The one clutching the newly acquired crystals shot a wide-eyed, indignant look, questioning the very idea of calling such valuable items stupid. Facing them with exasperated, gore-splattered fury, the other raged about the monstrous ordeal endured for these supposedly insignificant gems. With eyes wide and hands gesturing in furious exasperation, one figure pleaded for the other to finally think of someone else, to use their advancements for good instead of causing trauma. The other, however, cast a dismissive look, calmly asserting that altruism was self-defeating and true happiness lay in individual self-fulfillment. Their wide, confused eyes looked out with a wincing grimace, hands raised in an exasperated shrug. They voiced their genuine uncertainty about the lessons being imparted amidst the chaos. Their wide, anxious eyes searched the other figure, their expression a mix of exasperation and profound discomfort. They finally managed to articulate the troubling reality of their limited role models, highlighting the difficult position it put them in. The figure on the right, with a grimace of exasperation, gestured dismissively, refusing to engage in philosophical debate with someone whose ideas they considered too simplistic. Their companion, eyes wide with indignation and a hand raised in protest, quickly retorted, accusing them of expressing selfish beliefs. Met with an indifferent, almost bored gaze from the figure on the right, the middle one's worried expression deepened slightly as they accepted the situation. With a hint of resignation, they stated they would continue looking, while the figure on the far left observed the exchange with wide, anxious eyes. With wide, searching eyes, they voiced their incredulity, questioning if no one at all would step forward. A growing sense of dismay settled upon their features as the stark answer of no became painfully clear. Bursting into the room with wide, anxious eyes and an outstretched arm, one figure frantically asked if anyone had seen their missing Titanic trading card set. The other met this outburst with a deeply unconcerned, almost annoyed stare, while a third looked on from the side with wide, startled eyes. With a look of exasperated disbelief, one figure pointed a finger, acknowledging how thoroughly they'd been convinced. The other, eyes wide and a subtle smirk, savored their small triumph as the first reluctantly agreed they would make some space medicine. With tears streaming down their face and eyes wide in utter distress, one figure desperately clutched their phone. Nearby, two others looked on. One, with a bewildered shrug, questioned the reason for such intense sadness, while the other simply watched with wide, curious eyes. A desperate sob tore from one figure, their wide, anguished eyes looking up as they clutched at the other's arm. With bloodshot eyes and a deeply exasperated expression, the other stood rigid, seemingly overwhelmed by the raw emotional display. Following a harsh burp, one figure, eyes glancing away with an impatient air, announced it was time to go. Beside them, the other watched with wide, apprehensive eyes, their silent frown reflecting a lingering sense of distress. Sobs shook one figure, their gaze fixed mournfully on a device in their hands, tears flowing freely. A concerned companion watched with wide, worried eyes, while another figure on the far side drank deeply from a cup, eyes closed, seemingly oblivious to the distress. Tears streamed down their wide, anguished face, still clutching the device that held their recent heartbreak. With a pained, angry cry, they lashed out, revealing how a partner named Ethan had left them for someone else. Their gaze rolled upward, an open hand gesturing in exasperation as they declared they'd already reached their limit for tears. The previous outpourings had clearly taken their toll, leaving little patience for further emotional displays. With wide, worried eyes, one of them hesitantly suggested that someone should come along, perhaps out of empathy. The other, holding a small object, looked on with a tired, slightly sardonic expression, commenting on their companion's unexpected surge of benevolence. With wide, worried eyes, one figure looked up, urgently insisting they truly needed to take action. Their gaze pleaded with the other, clarifying the aim was to cheer someone up, while the other held a can with a visibly annoyed expression. With tears streaming down their face, one figure clutched their phone, expressing profound feelings of being unwanted even by their closest relatives. Their companion, with a weary and dismissive gaze, offered a cynical rephrasing, asserting that all human connection was but a cold biological drive. With hands thrown up in exasperation, one figure vehemently declared their refusal to drown in tears over what they deemed utterly trivial matters. Turning to the wide-eyed listener, they curtly dismissed certain collections as entirely worthless, no better than gathering carrots. The leftmost figure, holding a container, intently explained that a minority opinion didn't automatically make one an expert. The middle figure watched with a bewildered gaze, while the rightmost figure regarded the pronouncement with a deeply annoyed expression, phone still clutched in hand. Taking a drink, the leftmost figure spoke with cynical detachment, declaring monogamy a joke and questioning its perceived importance based on Earth's creature statistics. The youngest figure looked up, their eyes wide with distress and a tear forming. Beside them, the other figure stared forward, a bead of sweat on their brow reflecting a mix of shock and unease. With a tired, detached gaze, one figure cynically described humanity as nothing more than biological vessels. The other, watching with wide, exasperated eyes, could only offer a sarcastic remark on the perceived helpfulness of such a bleak declaration. With wide, earnest eyes, one figure began to speak about making a cure, only to be sharply cut off by the other. Their gaze filled with frustration, they indignantly declared their genius, insisting they hadn't forgotten a thing. With an exasperated gaze, one figure declared they wouldn't go to any place where they felt secondary to someone else. Beside them, another, holding a phone, cast wide, frustrated eyes upon the third, lamenting how long they'd been massaging their companion's pubescent feelings until they'd forgotten their objective, leaving the recipient of their words looking utterly dejected. With arms triumphantly spread, one figure loudly declared this deserted planet their personal haven, a place for peace and quiet, explicitly free from whining kids. Another figure watched with wide, bewildered eyes, while the third stood by, their gaze fixed with an unmistakable air of unimpressed exasperation. The smaller figure, with wide and expectant eyes, looked to their disheveled companion for guidance. They wondered aloud if they were meant to milk monsters or if this was a more dire, mega seed situation, while the other, with a weary gaze and a drip from their mouth, seemed barely to register the inquiry. Gesturing expansively at the barren expanse, the taller figure revealed it as a familiar place for recovering from countless hangovers. The smaller figure looked up with wide, bewildered eyes, perhaps reevaluating their expectations for this proclaimed haven. The taller figure, flask held to their lips, offered a detached explanation about the necessity of unpleasant tasks for the sake of science, glancing casually back. With a weary grimace and hands splayed wide, the smaller figure sought confirmation, their eyes reflecting a resigned acceptance of this uncomfortable truth. With a look of weary resignation, one explained the bizarre, uncomfortable necessity for their mission, nonchalantly adding it was a common occurrence. Their companion, holding a device, met the suggestion with a firm, disgusted refusal, their expression unwavering. With wide, exasperated eyes, the figure called out, instructing another to grab a shovel for their stupid little charity medicine. Their expression, illuminated by a stark, splitting light, clearly conveyed both annoyance and a weary, begrudging compliance with the task. Weaving through the conversation with a weary but determined look, one figure pointed towards a spot to rest, requesting permission. The other, clearly vexed, gave their assent, but not before launching into a bizarre, specific warning about dangerous local flora and its unpleasant effects, while a third listened with wide, slightly bewildered eyes. With a weary sigh and dirt smudged across their face, the larger figure clarified that digging was, in fact, not the current plan. The smaller figure, shovel in hand, looked on with wide, bewildered eyes, clearly puzzled by the sudden reversal. With dirt already smudged across their face, the figure gripped the shovel firmly, their wide eyes and eager smile reflecting a surprising readiness for the task. They spoke, asking where they should begin, a burst of determination evident in their posture. Clutching the shovel, the figure offered a somewhat strained yet eager grin, their wide eyes trying to convey genuine enthusiasm for simple elbow grease. They affirmed, with a hint of nervous conviction, that this straightforward labor was a much better alternative to their usual, more chaotic methods. With wide, determined eyes, one figure gestured upwards, eagerly detailing the valuable fluid held by the floating creatures and their audacious plan to bring them down. The other, shovel still in hand, stared back, utterly aghast at the sheer brutality implied by the task of securing the cure. With eyes closed, taking a casual sip from a cup, The figure nonchalantly reminded someone that sometimes difficult things must be done for science. A bead of sweat on their brow betrayed the environment, even as they firmly urged the other to simply begin the task. With wide, anxious eyes fixed on something above, they voiced their profound unease, clearly uncomfortable with whatever proposition had just been made. Their furrowed brow and slightly agape mouth underscored a palpable sense of apprehension. The individual holding a shovel firmly declared their current course of action unavoidable, explaining that their targets possessed formidable resilience. With wide, anxious eyes, their companion looked up, desperately pleading for an alternative, wondering if tranquilizing them was an option. The weary primary figure, eyes downcast at a tablet, Riley noted that while the place was indeed supposed to be deserted, the current unexpected activity was only slightly less terrible than an improv show. With a quizzical gaze, their companion confronted them, pointing out that they had previously assured them of the area's complete emptiness. With wide, frantic eyes and a grimace of extreme effort, they swung the shovel upwards, every muscle straining against the heavy implement. The hungry gazes of the monstrous creatures above confirmed the unavoidable, desperate defense they were forced to make. Their eyes, wide with sudden alarm and confusion, fixed on a distant point as they sharply extended an arm. With a slightly open mouth, they questioned aloud who that unknown figure could possibly be. With a theatrical gesture and a wide, confident grin, a flamboyant figure emerged, assuring them there was no cause for alarm as they announced their name. However, the axe-wielding individual stood poised with twin axes, their furrowed brow and wide, questioning eyes revealing only profound confusion. A bewildered expression clouded their face as they tried to grasp the grand adventures being described, while a confident finger playfully tapped their cheek. With a wide, mischievous grin, the flamboyant figure leaned in, affirming these tales of excitement were indeed true. Leaning in with a theatrical grin, the flamboyant figure enthusiastically promised grand adventures, lightly poking their bewildered companion to emphasize the thrill. Another companion, watching with a thoughtful expression, drew a comparison that visibly shocked the spiky-haired figure, who quickly asserted their own distinct sense of self. Recoiling in terror, the multi-eyed figure threw their hands up defensively, desperately warning their companion away from the helpless bystanders. The axe-wielding figure, eyes blazing with furious disappointment, demanded if these meager figures were truly the grand quarry promised, their blades thirsting for conquest. With wide, questioning eyes, they pressed a hand against the dark surface, wondering aloud if this confined space could truly be their promised ship. A hint of disbelief flickered in their gaze as they mused about its surprisingly small size. With wide, slightly frantic eyes, the multi-eyed figure gestured openly, excusing the departing individual's aggressive march towards the monolithic structure. They explained, a hint of concern in their gaze, that this one came from a civilization steeped in violence and was currently quite pent up. With an expansive gesture and a wide, eager smile, the multi-eyed figure promised a comfortable journey through the wonders of the universe. Yet, as their hand rested on the other's shoulder, the individual's wide, slightly uncertain eyes and parted lips hinted at apprehension rather than excitement. The first figure, eyes heavy with fatigue, took a slow drink as they voiced their weariness with an uninspired joke. Beside them, the other burst into a boisterous laugh, wide-eyed and gesturing, clearly pleased with their own wit and hoping for agreement. With worried eyes, one figure desperately dug into the barren ground, while above them, strange creatures floated eerily. An exasperated voice then urged them to hurry, delivering a cynical tirade about setting a bad example. With a wide smile and a direct gaze, one figure declared no sight could ever be as awe-inspiring as the beauty before them. A soft blush bloomed on the complimented figure's cheeks as they looked away, a small, thoughtful smile playing on their lips, a hand idly at their chin. The grimace on their face deepened, their three eyes wide with alarm, as they gestured with open hands. They emphasized how this planet, usually completely vacant, was now profoundly different, a clear sign of an unexpected disruption. With a casual arm thrown over their companion's shoulder, the three-eyed figure explained their unsettling arrangement, advising them it was best to make themselves scarce as the locals were easily roused by violence. Their companion's wide-eyed gaze and slightly open mouth conveyed pure shock at the grim implications. The curious figure, with wide, open eyes, eagerly asked about their companion's travels. Holding their axes, The warrior began to answer, a grimace forming as a sudden, unsettling pop cut their words short. With an unblinking gaze, a robotic figure directly challenged the muscular individual, demanding to know what they lifted. The axe-wielding figure stared back, wide-eyed in surprise, as their companion watched the strange encounter unfold with an utterly bewildered expression. A playful demonstration of new cologne quickly escalated into an enthusiastic suggestion for shots among some figures, though one responded with a disbelieving gaze and an outstretched hand. The boisterous scene drew a wide-eyed, shocked exclamation from a powerful, axe-wielding individual, their companion looking on with a shared expression of bewilderment. Suddenly, their eyes widened in alarm, a deep frown creasing their brow as they perceived a rising threat. With a shout, they declared the sudden arrival of an enemy, their tense body language reflecting the gravity of the situation. Their eyes widened in sudden alarm as one figure recoiled from the sight of the assembled Robobros, exclaiming in disbelief at their unexpected arrival. Another gripped their arm, looking equally stunned, while a third figure turned, preparing for what might come next. Their eyes wide with a desperate, panicked gaze, they clutched their head as their grandfather's name escaped their lips in a cry of utter distress. The sudden realization of danger was clearly overwhelming them. Their eyes wide with a frantic resolve, a savage grin stretched across their face as they brandished their glowing axes, shouting a fierce challenge of steel on steel to the metal men. Hidden behind a structure, another figure could only stare in wide-eyed shock at the sudden, explosive ferocity. With a defiant gaze, one robot issued a challenging call to come at them as another wound up a punch. Their ally, eyes wide with disbelief, questioned the escalating encounter, muttering, "Seriously, bro?" The defiance was short-lived as powerful metallic arms closed in, overwhelming their stance. With wide, panicked eyes and a grimace of struggle, they found their axe-wielding arm pinned, their strength unable to match the combined robotic might. Crouching low, their eyes wide with alarm, they braced themselves, a shovel clutched tight. The blank gazes of the massive, pink creatures loomed, pressing in from all sides, and a desperate resolve hardened their stance against the overwhelming presence. Their eyes wide with utter shock, they watched the unfolding chaos, gasping that someone was truly destroying all the Robobros. A sense of bewildered alarm crossed their face as the impossible became reality. Their sharp-toothed grin widened, yellow eyes gleaming with dark delight as they watched the unfolding chaos. With hands clasped in fervent anticipation, they found a sweet arousal in the escalating situation. Amidst the scattered remnants of their enemies, they pressed forward, a raw, triumphant grin on their face and eyes wide with primal glee. They roared their exhilaration, a fierce joy pulsing through them with every vanquished foe. A massive, pink creature plummeted from the sky above, its gaping maw dripping as it bore down upon them. One figure scrambled in a desperate run, while the others froze, their wide eyes reflecting sheer terror at the overwhelming, sudden threat. A loud clang punctuated the moment, and their wide, disbelieving eyes reflected a sudden realization. Half obscured by shadow, they proudly declared their success to their companion, astonished they had landed a hit. Their wide, alarmed eyes fixed on the swiftly approaching danger as they stood poised with their axe. As a swift projectile whizzed past, a nearby robotic companion's cap flew off, leaving the others watching in stunned distress. The frustrated figure's wide, enraged eyes followed the pink creature as it plunged into the mire with a massive S below SH. Throwing their hands up in exasperation, they cried out in disbelief, while the creature, tongue lolling, seemed perfectly content amidst the commotion. The figure on the right gestured with resigned hands, explaining that the only way to triumph was to wait decades for their opponents to realize their lives had been wasted. The figure opposite them recoiled, their multiple eyes wide with a look of stunned disbelief and revulsion at such a bitter proposition. With a pointed finger and wide, shocked eyes, one figure demanded to know if the others had simply used the Robobros as a cynical ploy for engagement. The accused, looking down with a weary, almost unapologetic shrug, offered a simple, resigned, "Oh well." One figure cast an exasperated look, sighing aloud about the repeated loss of companions, as their counterpart stood by with a weary gaze. Below, a third figure, eyes wide with horror, desperately clung to a massive, pink form, mouth agape as they stared upwards in terror. With a sudden whack, Green liquid splashed across the exposed workings of one figure's core. They exclaimed in irritation, calling the abrupt and messy assault not cool. The figure with the brown hair, eyes wide and mouth agape, pointed an accusing finger, their voice laced with utter disbelief. Nearby, the blue-haired figure looked utterly taken aback as their metallic companion, seemingly undeterred by its recent ordeal, bizarrely questioned the group's allegiances. With a determined gaze fixed on the task before them, one figure confidently asserted their plan to save the day. However, another, clutching their head with wide, panicked eyes, desperately questioned what they were going to do as a third watched the scene unfold with worried uncertainty. With an excited, wide-mouthed expression, one figure commended the other's effort, proudly declaring their skill. The figure with the shovel gazed steadily on the defeated robot at their feet, however, maintained a subtle look of apprehension amidst their success. As a deep mechanical whirring filled the space, one figure stood with a confident, defiant pose, their red eyes glowing intensely. Their companions observed with still, focused gazes, sensing the powerful energy now unleashed. With a focused gaze on the intricate mechanics, their hand expertly turned the final screw. A quiet sense of accomplishment settled over them as they affirmed, "That should do it." The air crackled with incessant laser fire as robots unleashed a furious barrage across the arid expanse. Huddled behind a massive protective mass, one figure gripped a device with an annoyed, determined gaze, while their companion sat wide-eyed, trembling with unmasked terror at the relentless assault. Clutching their head, eyes wide with distress, a desperate cry of "no" echoed across the desolate landscape. A realization dawned, chilling them to their core, as they counted the final, damning number, 19. A chilling voice declared self-destruct initiated in 20, triggering a wave of distress as electricity visibly sparked around their frames. Their red eyes glowed wide with alarm, and mouths twisted into pained, wavy grimaces, reflecting the sudden, terrifying countdown. With an authoritative gaze, one figure declared that their adversaries, acting as a hive, would all fall if a single one was neutralized. The wide-eyed listener and the figure in the foreground both stared in shocked comprehension, their faces etched with a mix of alarm and dawning realization. With eyes wide in wild elation and a triumphant grin stretched across their face, they threw their arms wide, letting out a resounding cheer. The sheer joy seemed to radiate from their vibrating form, a stark contrast to any previous tension. The figure's eyes, wide and overflowing, reflected the sheer horror of the unfolding events. With hands clasped tightly against their chest, a silent, guttural cry escaped them, their face contorted in an agony beyond words. The approaching figure, with wide, almost manic eyes, extended a hand, inviting them to explore the universe and see things never before seen. They then declared the universe had brought them together, but also smushed their last companion, leaving the other wide-eyed and stunned by the bizarre proposition. Believing it was their signal to make a quick and quiet departure, they propelled themselves through the doorway. Their multiple eyes darted about with a tense urgency, body leaning forward as they clutched their hat and cane, determined to vanish from sight. Lying amidst the gruesome scene, their wide eyes stared upwards, filled with a dazed resignation. They managed a weary agreement to the unseen other, confirming that, yes, they did indeed have to face this horror. Eyes wide with a desperate yearning, they cried out, insisting on their right to be special and unique. Their agitated posture and pained expression conveyed the fervent longing to stand out. Trapped within a shimmering capsule, they looked out with a desperate yearning for adventure, insisting they, too, deserved to embark on journeys. From the desolate ground, the other figure turned their gaze, offering a peculiar warning to deter them. Below, the number 15 hung in the air, a quiet, melancholic observation. With a direct, almost casual gaze, one figure held up a strange device and creature, explaining its rather personal and invasive intended use. The other's eyes widened in profound dismay, lamenting the return of such peculiar and uncomfortable methods. Amidst the turbulent landscape, one figure, with wide, terrified eyes and grime streaking their face, frantically urged escape. Yet, the other stood stubbornly, refusing to abandon their mission for pent juice, even as the ominous word, 13, hung in the air. The main figure, still clutching the device and its creature, widened their eyes in a mix of dismay and resignation, lamenting, "Aw man." Before them, the immense, pink form lay still on the barren ground, barely managing to whisper out a final, chilling. 10. With a wide, almost manic grin, one figure explained the profound depth of the impending situation, pressing the other to fully commit themselves to it. The listener's wide, terrified eyes met their gaze, clearly overwhelmed by the daunting prospect ahead. With wide, admiring eyes and a beaming smile, one figure expressed genuine awe, marveling at the life-risking journey undertaken for medicine. They enthusiastically praised the selfless act as proof of their companion's altruism, while the subject of their adoration merely frowned, their gaze distant and clearly unimpressed. Amidst a fiery barrage threatening to engulf their small vessel, one figure, perhaps sensing the rising dread, offered a gruff reassurance about their sister's resilience. Yet, with a glance toward the turbulent outside, a voice still laced with worry asked if Summer would truly be safe. With a broad, confident smile, the older figure declared their intent to help everyone. Beside them, the younger figure's wide, worried eyes stared, their hand clutching their arm in evident apprehension at the bold claim. A wide, almost manic grin stretched across their face as they elaborated on their thoughts, eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. They confidently detailed how their miracle cure also contained a powerfully natural, psychotic element, a revelation delivered with unsettling enthusiasm. The manic grin on their face widened even further, eyes gleaming with wild triumph as they raised a hand in a celebratory gesture. Drooling slightly, they proclaimed their catchphrase, utterly pleased with having inserted it right at the conclusion. With a manic grin still plastered across their face, eyes gleaming with chaotic glee, the individual on the right eagerly declared their intention to utterly demolish their targets. Slumped beside them, the other person offered a weary sigh, their expression full of familiar, resigned dread. Gesturing broadly across the vibrant, alien landscape, one individual beamed with obvious pride, their gaze falling on their companion. They declared this magnificent view a testament to their own excellent work, as the other walked beside them with a soft, appreciative smile. A gentle hand settled over their own shoulder as they looked with soft, appreciative eyes at their companion, remarking on how long it had been since they enjoyed such a simple, shared afternoon. A faint wistfulness touched their smile, cherishing this precious, tranquil moment. With a wide, proud grin, one individual affectionately draped an arm around the other, gesturing enthusiastically at the beautiful vista and boasting they made an excellent team, even joking about taking them on full time. The other, holding a picnic basket, looked up at the stunning view with an open-mouthed appreciation, confirming its beauty. Interrupted mid-snack, the individual's half-lidded eyes slowly focused as a persistent, low rumble intruded upon their moment. With crumbs clinging to their face, they asked, disoriented, about the source of the unexpected sound. Retracting their earlier words with a chuckle, the individual with spiky hair was utterly consumed by the snack's explosive flavor, eyes wide with pure, messy delight. Their companions simply observed the enthusiastic indulgence, a picnic basket held steady in their hands. With wide, hungry eyes fixed on the picnic basket, the spiky-haired individual dismissed any concerns, a trickle of drool betraying their true desire. Eagerly reaching out, they proclaimed their presence was solely for the other's cookies, who met their directness with a knowing, slightly surprised gaze. The spiky-haired individual, arms crossed and a detached expression, casually remarked on their pursuer's slow pace. Beside them, the blonde-haired figure's eyes widened in shock as armed, horse-headed figures emerged from a ship, one shouting the individual's name with intense resolve. With a loud VRR, a spacecraft fired its laser, drawing the blonde-haired individual's wide, concerned gaze upwards. The spiky-haired one, a hint of drool at their mouth, exhaled in an exasperated sigh, clearly recognizing the troublesome arrival as an unwelcome distraction. With wide, disbelieving eyes, the spiky-haired individual questioned if their companion had truly sold what they pursued. The horse-like figure, snarling and defiant, boasted of cashing in for personal gratification, prompting a look of profound disgust and a sharp warning that they would regret it. With a furious snarl and clenched fist, the blonde-maned individual glared, demanding to know the whereabouts of the amulet. Their spiky-haired companion, mouth agape and with a gesture of nonchalance, casually admitted to having sold it off years ago, their lack of concern evident. With wide, almost frantic eyes, the blonde individual's hand flew to their cheek, a desperate thought emerging as they proposed reasoning with the opposition. They gently touched their companion's arm, who listened intently. With wide eyes still betraying a previous shock, the blonde-maned individual suddenly felt a grinning impact from behind. A triumphant declaration of sight escaped the smaller figure, leaving the larger individual's gaze wild with a mix of pain and disbelief. The blonde-maned individual watched with wide, worried eyes as the blue-haired companion, a manic grin on their face, placed a hand on their shoulder. They laughingly explained their scheme was merely a distraction to ambush unsuspecting foes, as their horse-faced ally stood ready with weapon drawn, eyes wide with anticipation. Despite their evident distress, the blue-haired companion still managed a cynical remark, questioning the proposed course of action with a weary gaze. Drool escaping their lips, their expression conveyed a deep-seated contempt for what they perceived as an overly dramatic or expensive solution. With wide, frantic eyes, one individual fired their weapon, audibly declaring unexpected pride in their blonde-haired companion's career. Running alongside, the companion's gaze held a mix of shock and bewilderment at the sincere, sudden confession amidst the danger. Amidst the chaotic barrage of incoming fire, one individual, eyes wide with frantic urgency, desperately shouted for another to run and find cover. As a large companion reeled from the brutal impacts, their gaze held a grim, protective determination. With a weary, half-lidded gaze and a trail of green drool, one individual gestured broadly, insisting they were occupied with a task and requesting assistance. Their suggestion that the other lend a hand, citing their purported expertise, was met with a wide-eyed, slightly bewildered stare as they held their own peculiar device. As laser blasts shredded the wall, one figure cowered, hands clutched to their head and eyes shut tight in desperate fear, pleading for immediate action. Behind them, another individual aimed a formidable weapon with a grim, wide-eyed gaze, ready to face the chaotic threat head-on. Their wide, worried eyes fixed on the imposing presence beside them, one individual hesitantly voiced their inability to comply, stating that killing was against their ethics as a doctor. Clutching the device tightly, they couldn't bring themselves to do what was asked. With a kind, reassuring smile, a caregiver promised they would take good care of Bernie. Standing steadily beside the gentle horse, their gaze conveyed a quiet confidence, dispelling any lingering worries. With an enraged snarl, the imposing figure bared their teeth, their narrowed eyes fixed on the one before them. Weapons gripped tightly and nostrils flaring with a furious puff of air, they radiated a terrifying, unbridled rage. Stepping out from behind cover, a tense resolve hardened their features as they leveled their weapon. One eye wide with focus, the other squinted for precision, their unwavering gaze locked onto the unseen threat before them. As a violent SVHCH erupted, sending debris scattering a raw ARGH, tore from their throat, eyes squeezed shut in shock. One hand pressed against their chest, while the other, still gripping the weapon, remained poised at their temple, reflecting a moment of profound despair amidst the chaos. With a furious, spittle-flecked outburst, one figure desperately challenged any moral objections, arguing that brutal action was essential to avoid their own demise. The other, clutching their weapon, stared back with wide, startled eyes, visibly overwhelmed by the raw urgency of the situation. Eyes wide and streaming with tears, they cried out a desperate apology, their voice thick with anguish. Beside them, the air crackled violently as a blinding red energy pulsed, a harsh counterpoint to their profound regret. With intensely wide, sparkling eyes, the creature's gaze seemed to fixate on a target, mentally urging decisive, even violent action against them. Simultaneously, from the same unsettlingly earnest expression, came a gentle assurance that Bernie would be looked after with the utmost care. With tears streaming and eyes wide with anguish, they trembled, hearing the desperate cry to kill it. Their arm extended, gripping the device, they could only utter a pain, "I'm sorry," as they faced the dreadful task. Amidst the gory scene of the operating table, one figure cried out in anguish, "I'm sorry," their face a mask of tears and regret. The surrounding medical staff watched with wide, horrified eyes, frozen by the shocking display. With eyes wide and flooded with tears, they let out a prolonged, agonizing scream, their face twisted in despair. Clutching the bloodied instrument, they cried out in anguished apology, deeply regretting the unfolding horror.